Color is why my passion to create reignited. The way you color grade breathes life into your film, and you can completely change the emotion of a scene through color. Color grading can take a scene from this to this. Since I've begun posting videos on my channel, one common question I get over and over is how do I color grade, and in particular, how do I create a film emulation? Of course, what I do is a far cry from film, and one of the reasons why I've been so hesitant to make a video was that my color grading process was very tricky, very complex, full of nodes in DaVinci Resolve, and I would spend hours upon hours on just a small clip. That's why I was so excited when Dehancer reached out to me to make a video on their plugin. Now, even though they provided me a promo code so that my viewers can get a 10% discount, all the opinions are my own, and Dehancer does not get to see the video before I post it. In fact, I was so excited to try out this plugin because I had seen other people create using Dehancer, and I had always wanted to buy the plugin for myself. So when they did reach out to me, I was genuinely in shock that they would let a small channel like myself make a video for them. The promo code is in the description, and it will allow you to get 10% off your purchase and also support my channel, allowing me to continue making these videos for you. Dehancer allows users to have access to over 60 film profiles, allowing you to easily choose a profile you like and tweak it with the ability to push or pull the film and add incredibly realistic effects like film grain, halation, bloom, film breath, and damage, and even overscanning the image, in addition to so many other features, most of which I don't even touch because I find that I can already achieve my desired look by keeping a simple workflow, which I'll show you right now. Alright guys, so now I'm going to be taking you through my color grading workflow here in DaVinci Resolve, and I'm going to be showing you how I color grade a clip using the Dehancer Pro plugin. Here we are in the color page in DaVinci Resolve, and as you can see, I have created 4 extra nodes. The first 3 are going to be for my primary corrections, and the final node is going to be for the Dehancer plugin. Now, you don't have to label them, but because I like to do my primary corrections in individual nodes, I find that adding these labels helps me with the organization process to keep track. And also, I realize that many of you may be complete beginners to DaVinci Resolve, so this will give you a little bit of a introduction into a very simple node tree structure which you can use. As you can see here, our image is completely flat, devoid of any life or color. It's super pale, and this is because I shoot in log footage. Now, you can also use Dehancer with Rec 709 footage, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be color grading the log footage straight out of my Sony A7CII. So I'm not going to be touching any of the primary corrections first, but I'm going to be focusing on the Dehancer node. Once we are selected on the Dehancer node, we go to our right hand side and we can see the library. So on the library, I scroll all the way down, and under film emulation, you will find your Dehancer plugin once you've installed it. So you drag that on to the Dehancer node. Now you can see immediately the footage has changed, and to be honest, it doesn't look that great. That's because it thinks the source right now is Rec 709, which it is not. So I'm gonna go down and click choose camera, and showing you this shows you the range of different kind of sources that Dehancer supports, from your iPhone, which is insane actually. You can choose all sorts of different kind of log profiles that you can shoot with your iPhone. So if you are an iPhone shooter and you want to shoot iPhone log, this works perfectly. Or if you have an RE, a Blackmagic, a 4K pocket cinema camera, Canon, DJI. So if you are using a DJI drone and action, a Osmo Pocket, you can use Dehancer as well. But for the purposes of this video, I'll be selecting my Sony, my A7CII, and I'll be choosing the format which I filmed in, which is slog3gamut3.cine, which is my favorite picture profile to film in. Right away, we're looking at this image and it's not exactly that nice, right? So what I do is I can go over here and play with exposure, temperature, tint, defringe radius. The first thing I like to do is get the base look of my footage down first. So I'm gonna go through the film tab and check out the different film profiles. Now, even before I do this, I tend to like to go to the print tab and choose what profile I'm going to be using for the print. Now, you can go with linear, but one of the most famous prints profiles would be Kodak 2383 print film. So this is what it kind of looks like right now. But actually, personally, I kind of prefer Endura glossy paper most of the time. So I'm going to be sticking with Endura glossy paper, and I'll be adjusting it and seeing where we can go from there. So heading back up to film, I've got Kodak Vision 3 250D, which is a daylight balanced film. But you can just see from this drop down tab that there are so many different kinds of profiles you can go with. We can go to Ambro type. We've got all sorts of colors here. There's Ektachrome, there's Color Plus, there's black and white color profiles. There are so many different kinds of color profiles to choose from. It's really quite amazing what you can do. You can even get a bit funky with it, and there's this Lomachrome purple profile here. But for the purposes of this video, I usually stick with 3 different film profiles. That's either the Kodak Vision 200T or the Kodak Vision 3 250D, and sometimes I also like to use the Kodak Vision 3 50D. So based off what I'm looking at right now, I think I like the 250D the best. I'm actually going to be pulling the film all the way to -2. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is I will be going back up to temperature compensation and my exposure compensation. So I think I'm going to brighten it slightly, and I'm also going to make it a bit warmer because I usually prefer a sort of warmer tone in my footage. So I'm gonna pull it quite a bit. I think here, yeah, 42 kind of seems nice. So before I want to play with things like my film developer or film compression, I go into my primary corrections. So I'm gonna go into my white balance a bit, and I'm going to slightly adjust to the oranges and red hues, because I do like to have a slightly warmer tone. And then I'm gonna go into my saturation. Now, the idea that I usually take when playing around with saturation is I crank it all the way up and then I bring it back down based on what looks good. So let's do that right now. So I'm cranking my saturation all the way up in my primary color wheel, and to be very honest, I kind of like the way that this looks. I can take it down a bit, but I do like the vibrance that this deeper saturation is giving. And I don't think, because of this particular image, it's not very overpowering. So I think I'm actually going to stay at 100 saturation for this. I know, kind of crazy, but that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to pop back in to Dehancer and play around with some of the other settings. So I actually enjoy playing with the contrast in an image a lot more using the Dehancer plugin as opposed to the inbuilt DaVinci Resolve software. Maybe boost the color slightly, and let's see what that looks. I think that we're just gonna tone that down a bit, maybe just to 5. I kind of like the effect, but we don't want it to be a bit too overpowering. And then I'm gonna enable film compression, and you can see what that does, compressing the image. Without it on, you can see many areas are actually kind of washed out, but the second I enable it and it really pulls back some of the highlights that I didn't clip while filming. So in film compression, I can also play with things like the white point, the tonal range, and color density. I find that color density is quite similar to saturation. So if you can see, if I crank it up here, it also sort of saturates the image. But I think that we don't really want to add too much because we already maxed out on saturation. So I'm gonna pull that back, but maybe I'm gonna keep it at 60. I kind of like how that looks. So next we have under the expand tab, we can play around with things like the black point and the white point, which is something that you guys should be kind of familiar with. And I don't think that I really want to have darker blacks here. I feel like where it was at originally is kind of perfect. Maybe just slightly. So for the print, of course we chose the Kodak Endura glossy paper initially, but I can give you guys a look of what it looks like on linear, on Cineon film, on the Fujifilm prints, and then also on the quite popular Kodak 2383, which actually is quite a pleasing look as well. It has a very nostalgic, rugged kind of vibe to it, which I do quite like, but I usually prefer to use the Endura glossy paper. So I'm gonna stick with that. So under the color head, you can sort of mess with the different tints. You can play around whether or not there's extra blue. Oh, I've got to enable it first. You can see it tinting blue or tinting yellow, so depending on what you kind of want, but I'm not really gonna mess around with this here. If I play this true, you'll realize that there is actually quite a lot of grain, and that is using the film grain setting here. So I've realized that the film grain that you can get out of Dehancer is probably the most pleasing and accurate film grain that you can get out of any plugin to emulate film, or any of the different kinds of power grades that you can get for DaVinci Resolve. You can choose between 8mm, 16mm, 35mm, and a range of 50 to 500 ISO for your different types of film grain. Or you could even set a custom setting for your film grain. But I'm just gonna go with 35mm film at 250 ISO. So sometimes I do feel running through this clip that the film grain has to be pulled back a bit. I kind of like to have a more subtle grain look in my films, so I'm gonna pull that back to 10. So I'm gonna play that through again. And yeah, that's perfect. I found that setting it to 10 is the right balance for me to achieve a sort of nostalgic look without being a bit too overpowering and distracting. Next, we move on to halation. Now, halation is usually used around lights, and it creates a sort of red outline, I guess, in simple terms, around lights. But as you can see in this image here, we don't really have sort of fluorescent lights. So when I put it on, it just sort of adds a red tint to my image, which is not really what I'm going for. So I'm gonna leave that off. But if you're doing nighttime videography and you do have these neon signs and these fluorescent lights, or maybe fluorescent highlights around your subject's head, when you turn on halation, it gets this really nice red sort of glow around your subjects, around the lights, and I find it to be very aesthetically pleasing, and I will always use it in those kind of situations. Now, one that I use all the time is bloom. So I have a Cine Bloom 10% from Moment on my camera at all times. It's on my camera shooting right now. The Dehancer bloom is magnificent. Let me just enable it right now. And you can see, just like that, you get this dream-esque look to your image. In my opinion, looks beautiful. I find that being able to boost the bloom in post using this plugin to be absolutely game-changing. So you can even adjust the amount of bloom that you get here. So you can just see as I toggle and I slide through the difference that it makes. And this allows me to achieve that soft, dreamy look. So I'm gonna keep it at 50 because I think that that's a nice balance. And film damage is also incredible. So let me just put that on right now. And you can see as I play through that you get these imperfections and scratches as the film plays through. You can see it coming around the image right now, and it just adds to this authentic kind of vibe. I mean, most people know that you're not shooting real film, but being able to have these sort of, you know, dust dots here and there, or these scratches in between flickering in and out, it just adds a bit of depth that sort of immerses your viewer even more into your world that you're crafting with your videography. You also can overscan, but I don't really use this. But I think it's quite cool if you're trying to get some interesting effects out of your film, so you can play around. And what I thought is pretty cool is being able to do horizontal. So I'm sure like in some scenes maybe you want to do a cute collage effect. I think that this is actually quite interesting, but of course most of the time I keep this off. And vignette, it's just a normal vignette. You can enable it, and I would probably pop it up a bit so it's not so big, but I don't really use vignette that often either, so I usually keep that off. And that's kind of the final product. I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved here. If I cycle through, so I've definitely got the colors that I like. I usually lean towards these warmer tones and this sort of nostalgic grainy effect, and I really like it. And I'm by no means a colorist or good at color grading at all, and that's why Dehancer is so amazing. It allows me to go from absolutely nothing, so let me just toggle this off now. It lets me go from this to this within a few minutes. You know, if I wasn't making a tutorial walking you through everything, within 5 minutes I would have graded this clip, and then I would be able to copy those settings and apply it to similar clips and make adjustments for other different clips. That's the end of today's video. I hope you found today's tutorial useful, and you'll be able to take some of the skills that I shared with you today to go on and color grade your own videos and make content of your own. But before I go, I would like to talk about the main downside of Dehancer. And I know that people do talk about it being CPU intense and lagging. I actually didn't have any issues with that after I set up the plugin properly, so I only talk about the one con that I genuinely feel is a real consideration, and that is of course the price. At 449 USD, it is quite expensive, and if you're not going to use it that much, or if you're just a recreational user, $449 can buy you a lot of things. It can buy you a new lens, can buy you the DaVinci Resolve editing software, can buy you any editing software at that price point. So I would say that you would have to really think about the amount of use you get out of it if you're going to purchase this plugin. I would also like to add that Dehancer actually has a mobile app, and this allows you to edit video and photo similar to the Dehancer Pro plugin on your computer in the editing software. It basically allows you to edit photos and have access to essentially the full range of Dehancer's suite of plugins and effects, from bloom, halation, the different film profiles, the different print profiles, and grain, and all that other good stuff is actually possible to be accessed on your iPad or your phone, whatever device you use. And I've actually found that sometimes when I'm just editing photos on the go, I like to just import it directly onto my iPad, and I use the Dehancer mobile app to edit my photos, and it's a nice way to get that film look on your photos without having to import onto your computer, open up Lightroom, or previously I was editing my photos in a editing software like DaVinci Resolve and then just taking a screen grab of the result. So this is actually a much more efficient way to get that film look by just using your mobile device and importing your photos directly onto their mobile app. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. In the last 2 months, I've really got a huge amount of support. Well, I guess relative to my own channel, I've recently broke 250 subs, so I'm super happy, and I'm just so grateful that you guys tune in and enjoy and watch my content, and I hope that I can continue to deliver that for you. So please do like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy what you see, and I'll see you in the next one.